Hello, and welcome to episode number 257 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have two of those in Pat Evans and Sam McQuillan. You should definitely go and check out all their work over at LegalSportsReport.com if you have not done so already. And if you are not watching the video version of this, and you can see Sam's beautiful beard that he has grown since the last time that we did this podcast, you need to go over to the YouTube channel and take a look at that puppy. Me and Pat are sitting here going, man, all the money in the world couldn't grow a big, beautiful beard like that. Sam, you come in here and you're making us feel jealous. I don't know what to say, man. That's kind of rude of you, I got to admit.
I'm sorry, Matt. I appreciate the compliments, but I'm sorry to offend you with my beard. I'm sorry to make you jealous.
I mean, Pat, it's like a deal where as two guys that have, lacking the chin follicles, you see a guy pop on here, the new year, I'm ready to feel good about myself, 2025, let's hit this thing running. And then now we got to deal with that,
Yeah, he just comes on and it's a new look for him just in the new year. It's great. Is that for Penn State or is this just a fun thing to do?
We'll go with Penn State. I'm keeping it until they lose.
All right, there we go. I love it. God, by the way, Happy New Year to everybody out there. Thanks for being with us here. 257 here as we move into 2025. We will talk about what's going on from an online casino front. Couple of states to talk about maybe. Are we finally going to get some sports betting? We'll see what the guys think about that. Of course, we're going to be watching Texas very heavily in 2025, an update there, and then we're betting a lot of money here over in the United States legally on sports betting, so we'll get to that. But Sam, kick us off with some interesting stuff happening now, currently only in New York, but DraftKings certainly put something out that caught everybody's eye.
Yeah, this definitely caught the eye of the industry, the eye of bettors in the specific state, as well as Wall Street and investors out there who keep a watchful eye over the money that companies like DraftKings can make. Just around the turn of the new year, DraftKings announced if you're in the state of New York, you can pay $20 a month for a subscription service they're calling DraftKings Sportsbook Plus. Now, what you get in return for that $20 a month is access to stepped up parlays. These are boosts that they've offered for the past couple of years on select bets. If you bet a parlay that is 2 legs, then you get a 10% boost. If you do 3 legs, 20%, 3 legs, 4 legs, 30%, and so on, all the way. If you get up to 8 legs, you get a 100% boost. So that basically would double your odds on a long shot parlay, as long as the legs are minus 500 or shorter odds. They don't want you parlaying, I can't even think of something right now, maybe like OKC to hit over 50 wins, something like that. That's already a guarantee. But it's starting off in New York with a free trial. So this is, something a lot of companies do. They allow people to see the product first, get used to it, and then see if they want to pay the $20 or not. But just really set off a lot of, different people thinking about why now, why this state. Parlays, obviously, that's what you're getting with this service. You're getting to bet more parlays theoretically if you're paying the $20. You want to be using it. And we've seen parlays transform a company like DraftKings from burning $150 million in 2023. That was their negative EBITDA to this year. They already have 92 million in the positive for the fiscal year 24. They haven't reported the fourth quarter yet, but basically the company, and if you follow the industry, FanDuel, everybody else, the way that they're becoming profitable is by pushing parlays. So this fits into that bucket of another way to get people to bet more and more parlays, which they've made no secret about is really their mission here. Now you have to think, why New York? New York is the highest tax state. It's also the biggest state out there, the most important state for them in a bunch of ways. So why start there? Well, New York was one of the states, if you recall, that was planned for this surcharge. It was going to be this fee on bettors where if you're in one of these 5 high tax states, sorry, but because the tax rate is so high, even though we agreed to it, we're going to charge you. They ended up not going through with that plan. It got a lot of backlash. FanDuel said they weren't going to do the same thing. But that surcharge plan was planned for right around the same time as you have this new subscription service come out. And notably, the $20 you'll pay a month is not technically betting revenue, at least not according to any regulations that are out there so far. Maybe down the line, New York wants to do something to get at it. but that $20 is going to go untaxed. So that is just yet another lever that the CEO, Jason Robins, might say that they've pulled to try to mitigate these burdens. But just a really interesting, development. This is the first we've seen, obviously, of this. Whether another sports book would follow suit, I don't know. Whether they'd keep it around, you don't know. They like to say they experiment with things. So we should hear more about it when they announce earnings in February, how many people have signed up, how successful it's been. But it's definitely something that's turned heads already to start the year. And we're going to have to keep watching going forward.
2-leg parlay, a 10% odds boost. A 3-leg parlay could get you a 20% boost. You could go all the way up to 11 or more. That would actually double what you would win on the parlay. And Pat, listen, for savvy bettors, for people who understand the edge, whatever it might be, they look at this, they roll their eyes. They're like, what is going on? Give me a break. How could you ever do something like this? And then I look at my little subset of people where you have to kind of remove yourself from the situation. You have to remove yourself from the, oh, I know better and all this. My friends basically exclusively bet parlays. I mean, when I say this, I'm being dead serious. Like there is no grinding out 110s with those guys. Like they're not in it to grind out a little. It is the full on, hey man, look at this 4-legger, 5-legger, 6-legger that I've got and whatever. So if this were to make it to Louisiana, they would do this, because to them being able to see that number that they could potentially win get bigger, and it only cost $20 a month. This is something they would readily, put into their account and say, yeah, man, fine. Charge me the $20 a month. And so I think we do at least have to kind of step back and realize this is probably catering to a bigger mass of people than we really want to give credit to.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think I like this better than the surcharge because at least the people are opting into it and they're making that decision. And to your point, yeah, that's the huge market right now. And that's to Sam's point of why these companies are trying to make all their money off of parlays, is because people are doing it. People want that lottery ticket that you've always talked about, Matt. I mean, it's fun. It's fun to put a big parlay together sometimes if you're just watching a game and you're like, I don't know what else to do. And you just do it and you see a potential couple $1,000 payout and you're like, woo! Does it happen? Almost never. But to your point, having that number be a little bit more exciting for a $20 a month charge, why not if you're already doing that regularly? But I don't know about you guys. I'm just sick of subscriptions in my life. So I don't see anything good about this for me. Because I'm already trying to cut as many out, and I just want to be able to buy something and have it. Not have to continually pay for it.
Yeah, no, I get you 100%, but it is like you said. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is for the people that were losing their minds about the surcharge thing, and rightfully so. And I got all of that outrage. This is an opt-in. I mean, this is not like something you have to do. So you're choosing to do this if you want to do this, and so. These are the people who are probably almost exclusively betting parlays. They just want the rush, right? They're in it for the $10 bet that could be the 200. I mean, it's that type of deal. And so I don't really have a problem really with this. I know a lot of people are going to, again, roll their eyes at all of this. I mean, you're saying, yeah, man, I'll take it on. I want to do this. I think it's cool. I play a bunch of 4- and 5-leg parlays. The fact that I could boost it 25% or 30% or something that's interesting to me. So kind of is what it is. I mean, and the market will dictate whether it sticks or not, right? I mean, like if they end up being like, yeah, actually this kind of fell flat, then whatever, they'll probably get rid of it. But I imagine there'll be enough people to be interested in it for it to stick around.
I would say probably.
Yeah. To both your guys' points, I think when we see how many people have signed up for this and opted in, that's going to be a huge validation point for DraftKings. Like, I really think a lot of people will be interested in this because you just had the Morgan Stanley survey say that 50% of all bets people place now are parlays. FanDuel just talked about 70% of all our bets on NFL and NBA are parlays. So people obviously like parlays. They want to keep doing it. And I think once we get the data that shows that people are actually willing to pay even more money, because they already get criticized for not, these are sucker bets or whatever, but once we get more data that shows how much people really do love those bets, I think from the financial investing perspective, you're going to have a ton of, people in the gaming sector being like, oh, like, why doesn't FanDuel do this? Why don't we, like, they love subscription services, to your point, Pat. Like that's people love pushing those because then you get people to keep paying for these fees. So if it's that kind of thing where that could really transform, the gaming investment community as well, I think it's just a really, interesting thing to watch.
We knew we were going to be talking a ton about online casino over the next several years. And Pat, we have 3 different states, if you head over to legalsportsreport.com right now, in which we have some updates on. So why don't you tell everybody about what's going on over there right now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, a ton of sessions kicked off today, a ton more kick off next week. Legislative season is here, and that's why we're seeing a ton of bills being filed. So far, just 3 that we know of for sure. There's been a couple that were filed in the fall as well for online casino in Louisiana, Ohio. Those types are going to be kind of percolating. But there's a couple that are new and exciting. I mean, Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker has said it's worth considering, and he might put it in his proposed budget that'll be kind of drafted and ready in February. They have a $3 billion shortfall they're looking at. So a couple proponents who have introduced online casino legislation in the past are saying, what better way to do this? This is great. Pritzker's been friendly to the gambling industry for the most part. I mean, of course, they've legalized sports betting under him. They've expanded their land-based casino ecosystem under him. He, of course, did last year raise the taxes for sports betting. So, not all friendly, but certainly looking at it from that point of view, it could be in his budget. And from there, who knows what the legislator decides to do. Maybe they do go ahead and pass it just because the governor included it. Maybe they don't. We'll see. That's why we watch it. We'll see. Virginia, an introduced bill. I don't know that it has much legs, probably just to get the conversation going. I think we're going to be saying that a lot this year, mostly because of the full headwinds against online gaming. I mean, just in general, the U.S. Senate hearing last month, a hearing today in Minnesota that we'll talk about in a few minutes. There's just a lot of headwinds, and I think that's even more magnified for online casino. You often in the hearings you hear, why would we put slot machines in a pocket for a couch, that kind of thing. And so I think a lot of these bills are just for education purposes. Maryland is interesting. Delegate Vanessa Atterbury has reintroduced legislation similar to hers last year, which ended up passing the House, but then it fell on deaf ears in the Senate. The Senate is the uphill battle there. Senator Ron Watson, he's a big proponent. He tried to muster up some support in the Senate last year, didn't really do much, but he talked about lessons last summer at the Nickel G's conference, and believes there is a lot of education that he could have been doing beforehand. So maybe he did that since then, and we'll kind of watch that carefully. But again, that passed the House last year and is reintroduced in the House. So it'll be interesting to watch to see if that can follow the same journey and maybe go another step further.
Sam, we've talked a ton about casino and just how it's a little bit more difficult to get people on board with sports betting. It seemed it was kind of like, all right, as a couple of states got it going, and it was like, hey, we need to do it because our bordering state is doing it. And next thing you know, it was kind of the snowball effect. And we get to where we are right now. Hasn't been the case with casino, just a little bit more that goes into all of that. So if you're in any of these states, how optimistic should you be, or on the reverse side of that, how pessimistic should you be?
Yeah, I think the industry has learned a lot over the past couple of years that you have to take all these bills or possible signs of progress really with a grain of salt. And to Pat's point about a lot of these bills just being, education pieces, I think that's really important too. A lot of the industry, I think that you'll talk to now currently is not as gung ho about this happening, but they are optimistic about being able to educate lawmakers through trying, these bills. So many bills get introduced, they don't even go anywhere. But so a lot of this is about just being able to have those meetings with lawmakers, being able to, even before the hearings start, get in a room with them and kind of just demonstrate how this works. I think in the past, it really hurt, or it wasn't maybe the best approach with sports betting to talk about it as a huge tax revenue generator, because it's a lot of the times it was just a drop in the bucket, unless you're a state like New York. But now Illinois has raised their tax obviously as well. But sports betting, if you look at like a state like Illinois, it's made $500 million in 4 years from online sports betting. Then you look at iGaming, and what is projected to make a year is $800 million annually. So if you multiply that by 4, that's like $2.5 billion or something like that in the same time frame. So when you talk about governors starting to put it in their budget, thinking about maybe that's a mechanism we can use to pass it, I think that's a sign of progress itself is, a governor putting it in their budget makes a lot more likely to be included, because that's part of the political process there, as opposed to just a bill being introduced. But I do think it's progressing. I don't think if you're in any of these states and you're clamoring on message boards, when I'm going to get this, when we're going to get that, you should be holding your breath, because then you'll be pretty exhausted. Because it's going to be a long fight for the industry. But FanDuel, DraftKings, everybody else, they really want this stuff to happen. It's their end game at the end of the day. So they're going to put a lot of effort in there.
No, absolutely. And guys, just a quick reminder, everything we do here is absolutely free. So if you are listening to us just through the audio version, if you want to go in, subscribe, rate, review, you hear us say that every single week, but do appreciate all that support. And then, of course, if you found us and Sam's beautiful beard over on the YouTube channel, then go ahead, hit that subscribe button as well. Do appreciate the support there as we grow that channel along the way here. Pat, let's talk some sports betting this time, and a couple of states that we have brought up a couple of different times on the podcast as well. And so maybe we can give some hope to some of these people.
Maybe. I don't want to get too excited about it. I mean, Minnesota is something, the last 3 years they've come close. We've talked about it ad nauseum on here and, on LSR.com and all that. But Minnesota's so interesting. They've got such a distant cooperation, I guess. Last year they said they had a deal on the goal line. They just ran out of time and didn't get to vote for it. The Republicans want the horse racing tracks involved. The Democrats want tribal exclusivity, and there's some middle ground that I would think that they supposedly found last year, and then they didn't get it done. So maybe they didn't actually find anything. They were just trying to be optimistic. I don't know. This year it could be even more difficult. The House, rather than being democratically controlled, is now fully split. The Senate is like a one-person majority for the Democrats. So it's a very, very fragile system. And then this year, it seems like the opponents are going to be kind of louder. Senator John Marty's filed a bill already that is very heavily responsible gambling focused, to the point that the industry is kind of scared of it. They don't want that. And then today, we're talking on Wednesday, Marty is hosting a hearing that is talking about the harms of sports betting. And after talking to some industry sources, they're not very happy because they tried to reach out. They wanted to testify. And they were told, no, this is just to hear the negatives of the industry. We've heard plenty during the hearings for the bills about why we need to legalize it and who profits from this. Now we need to hear what this can do to our society and our families and our bank accounts. And so that's kind of interesting. I'll have a story up soon at LSR about kind of what happened at that hearing and some industry feedback. But I think that's a big thing. Is, earlier in the fall, I talked to a senator who is a big opposition of sports betting, and she said, we're not going to lay down. This is going to be something that we're here to fight, because we don't think it's good for Minnesota. And yeah, they're getting louder there. Alabama is such a strange state. Again, some place that's been fairly close the last couple of years. They're one of 5 states without a lottery. And a couple of years ago, the Senate put together a comprehensive gaming package, including sports betting. They pushed it to the House. The House didn't vote for it. Last year, the House based a package on the same package. It passed the House, didn't pass the Senate. So we're just kind of at a weird stalemate of like, well, you did it, we did it. Now we both don't want it. The House said it's in the Senate's hands to start it this year. And so far what I'm hearing is maybe they're just going to try to do a lottery just to get started on gaming rather than try to push a bunch of things at once. Because last year it included full land-based casino and online sports betting. Maybe just a lottery is kind of a way to get the ball rolling versus trying to do it all at once.
Sam, we always go to the map whenever we start talking about these states and the various states that are bordering them. And we know when we look at Minnesota, yes, you got it in Iowa, but Minneapolis, pretty long way. Wisconsin doesn't have online, so you'd have to physically go into a casino if you wanted to do that or whatever. So this is definitely one of those states where you're sitting there going like, hey man, like we could really get some business here. It's not like, some of the businesses leaving, going across the state lines or whatever, any of that. It's kind of like, hey, if we could get this, if we could figure something out here. Minnesota got a decent following, obviously, on their professional sports teams and things like that. I mean, I think Minnesota's certainly not one of those states where we would just kind of, oh yeah, and by the way, Minnesota got legalized.
Yeah, Minnesota would be pretty big because of mostly a lot of, the professional sports franchises in there as well. I think it's interesting that it's been one of those states that, you would think would legalize, but yet, it has a myriad of problems with the political process, with the tribal process of stakeholders, and talking about the neighboring states and, that argument of, businesses leaving, you have all your neighbors are doing it. So I'm wondering if we're almost at a time now where the factor of time is becoming a negative thing, when you used to kind of just think, okay, it's just a matter of time before these states legalize. Now you're having these congressional hearings pop up. You're getting more, it seems like more steam is being generated at a federal level, at a national, just media level, sort of kind of against sports betting, because we've had it for so long. Now maybe some of this pushback is starting to kind of pick up steam. And you have to wonder if maybe that's now going to be a bad thing for these states like Minnesota and others that maybe we haven't talked about yet, where that argument could be picking up steam. And then it's not as easy as just, okay, the sports books need to focus on this state now or give it some time. And now they'll actually have to do more battle. It kind of seemed like a lot of the lobbying for sports betting had been done already, but you never know with the political landscape and just kind of like the macro media environment in general. So yeah, you would think they would have done it by now, but they haven't, obviously.
Here in 2025, we know one of the things that we're going to be keeping a giant tally on here is what's going on in Texas in 2023, the hot state. Then, of course, as being one of the biggest states in the country, of course, you only meet every 2 years, because that makes complete and total sense. And so here we go, like having to wait until 2025 to get some more talks here going. Pat, this is one of the things where we've talked about the power players in the state that have all come out and certainly been in support of this. We've talked about power players coming into the state in the Adelson family and the Sands group, wanting to be involved in Texas, wanting to try to get stuff done there. We know about the political influence that the Adelson family has had throughout the course of their lives as well. And so here we go, 2025. Texas on the prize is here for everybody. What's the update here in Texas?
I mean, there are bills filed, but to your point, it's just momentum is building. And I mean, again, John Scott, a former Secretary of State, has come out and said, the Texans want this. We need to let them vote on this. That this should get passed. Former Governor Rick Perry is on there. To your point, the Adelson family is just dumping millions for lobbying. Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, Tillman Fertitta, they're just all for this. They want this expansion. The industry's all eyes on it. We've seen the reports that come out and say this could be the biggest market by handle by far, which is crazy to think about. So, I mean, when you kind of pin that against Minnesota or Georgia, these two states that have been talking about it for so long, you can make that up in a heartbeat in Texas. And so, I mean, the industry's all eyes on it. The problem is still Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in the Senate saying there's no way, it's not on our platform, this isn't okay. So at some point you wonder if this momentum is going to build up enough to kind of put enough pressure on him that he pops, for lack of a better term, like maybe he's like, okay, I guess we want it. I think that'll take a lot of senators coming out and saying, going against the Republican Party platform and saying, yeah, we do want to do this because our residents want this, so we need to give it to them. And until the momentum builds that much, I think we're going to be talking 2027 still. But the amount it is snowballing right now is impressive. I mean, the more and more they come out and say, random people like this former Secretary of State come out and say, like, hey, this is something we need to do. I mean, the more power players, the more the pressure builds, and the more likely it is something happens. But is it this year? Well, that's why we're watching,
And Sam, it's obviously when we talk about Texas and saying that it could be the biggest by far, they would have to unseat New York. But when you look at Texas, I mean, there is the addition, right, of the big time college factor, college football factor, the college that New York certainly has the professional teams and the incredible loyalty there, but you're talking adding in like University of Texas and Texas A&M and Houston and all the schools with SMU and TCU around Dallas and all of this that have this incredibly huge, loyal, and I should also mention wealthy fan base, to come in and add to the handle there to go on top of all of the professional sport teams that they have as well. And I think that's what people are thinking here when it kind of like says, okay, not just because of the people in Texas too, but you're kind of adding an element that New York doesn't really have in that.
Yeah, and if you look at New York, and anytime you talk about the state in general, you got to focus on the city and all the people who live there. So many people who live in New York City. I mean, I'm a native New Yorker, so I'm not part of this group, but so many people who live there are transplants or people who just moved there who don't have these huge loyalties to teams that, like the Giants or the Jets who play in New Jersey, or even the Knicks, Yankees, whoever. So many of the people in New York don't have these generations of affiliations with these teams. But when you talk to the bookmakers, the Giants, the Jets, like all these big New York franchises are still among the most bet, and a lot of that is just because of the size of New York, people want to be engaged with games. But I have to wonder, when you bring that to a state like Texas, where, as far as I know, a lot of people live there for a long time, and the Cowboys are a huge national brand. And to your point, you have all these colleges there, you have all this interest, you have money being pumped into these schools from the NIL level and everything. And it just seems much more, kind of all there and together, as opposed to a bunch of people coming in and changing the environment as well. I really would be curious to see, we legalize Texas. Now, are the Cowboys, do they attract 500% more bets than everybody else?
Right.
Like, what happens to those numbers and that loyalty you had built up in the state?
Yeah, no, I think in the blink of an eye, the Cowboys would become the most bet team in all of sports in anything. Like, I think in the blink of an eye, because it would be, you already have the kind of, like you mentioned, the national fan base that is with the Cowboys. And now everyone in the state could actually do it and do it legally and whatever. Yeah. I think like overnight we would have bookmakers say, I've never seen the action on a team like we've seen on the Dallas Cowboys. I think that would happen literally overnight with all of this. But as we talk about kind of, the states and all of this, that there are legalized states and there are people betting a ton of money here on these legalized states, Sam. And so we actually have an awesome article that Eric wrote over there at legalsportsreport.com, just kind of doing this 2024 year in review. And while we still have some big states to go, yes, California still needs to go. Yes, Texas still needs to go. We just talked about Minnesota and stuff like that. Lots of money still exchanging hands.
Yeah, if you haven't got a chance to check it out yet, definitely go over to legalsportsreport.com and read this just amazing analysis by Eric Ramsey, who's good with all our numbers and really good at translating the numbers into actual info that you can use and read about. But he's according to his estimates, we have $150 billion was bet at legal sports books on legal sports betting apps in 2024. That's with 33 states reporting so far, and 28 of those 33 saw handle records. So it's not one of those cases where we had a huge ton of states legalize this year or launch this year. We have just betting going up in general pretty much everywhere, and 95% of that was online, further fueling the argument that if you're going to legalize sports betting, you should do in person and online, or in some states like Tennessee, just online. But numbers up across the board. So 23% increase in overall betting handle from the previous year. And even more notably, revenue was up 29%. So that's, again, while people are betting more and more, operators are also doing a better job at taking money from people. And that's even despite the NFL calendar, where we saw just an unprecedented amount of favorites winning, a lot of unfavorable sports outcomes for the books. So interesting that, while they are weathering one of the worst NFL kind of results in recent memory, they're making more money than they ever have off of more money as well. $3 billion went to state and local governments, which, we referenced earlier. Sports betting isn't really this giant budget savior, but it's definitely not a drop in the bucket compared to, kind of what people thought when sports betting was first legalized. I don't think anybody really thought that within the first, 4 or 5 years, we'd have $3 billion in taxes. But the biggest takeaway, you go back to revenue, is that hold was up to 9.5% across the board, as people are betting more parlays, notably a state like Nevada, where you have less parlay options, less player prop options, more in-person betting. They had one of the lowest holds at 6.4%. So that's really telling. If you look at a state with more restrictions, less options for people, operators are going to do not as well there. And of course, that could be due to some sharper bettors in the state as well. But yeah, just another great year for the books. As money bet is up across the board, handle, revenue is up, hold is up, taxes are up. Just their biggest year yet by far.
And Pat, we go in. One of the great things about any Eric article is that he puts charts. Like Eric loves charts. You can go and you can just visually see this if you want to, and you can go in and take a look. And I think people obviously, even if somebody had not been paying attention to the industry, if we'd have said, okay, tell us what do you think the top 10 biggest markets are? Well, they certainly would have said New York. I don't know where they would have gone from there. Maybe they make their way to Illinois. Maybe they make their way to some of these, but just to go in and be able to visually see what the top 10 markets are and have people go like, oh, really? Massachusetts, Arizona? Like, I think it might actually surprise some people whenever they go and take a look at this. It really is a great article to go in and kind of mess around with.
No, it's great. And I think, nobody's a bigger numbers nerd than Eric. I think he would be proud of us to say that.
Yes.
Yes. And so it is fun.
He proudly wears the badge. Don't worry, guys. We can call him a numbers nerd. He's not going to take offense. It's okay. Yeah.
And yeah, he does. He breaks everything down better than I think anybody else around, and it's fun to look at. Other parts of that article that were fun is the battle for third. You see BetMGM fairly ahead of everybody else, but again, you get the charts laying everything out. Super fun. And then, of course, the last part of the article talking about kind of the prediction or the market, the trading markets, and how that could change things nationwide, which is bonkers. And of course, we've got plenty of coverage of that at Legal Sports Report. So yeah, just Eric doing his thing, being great and funny and awesome. Go read it.
all of the charts that you can handle, guys. You should definitely go and take a look. And I think what Pat said, I think you'll be pretty interested to see just that battle for third, fourth, fifth, and how that may or may not play out here over the course of 2025. You might think some of these are doing either better or worse, actually, somewhere along the way. I'm not going to spoil it because you're going to have to do the click, and you're going to have to go and check the article out, and you're going to have to click around at all the different charts out there. But it is absolutely fantastic as we move into 2025 here. And guys, 257 episodes of this show. Unbelievable that we've been doing this for as long as we have. Can't wait to see everything that happens here in 2025. Like we said, all eyes will certainly be on Texas. And with that, I know, Pat, you already kind of tipped your hands, think that we're looking more at 2027 here, but hey, listen, it's tangentially a gambling, show here or something like that. So if we're putting odds on this, what odds would you put on Texas actually getting something done this year?
Oh man. Plus 1,200.
Oh, no. No one in Dallas wanted to hear that. Sam, can you give me a better number? Or give me a worse
give me
number?
$20 and I'll boost you, 20% there.
I don't have the capital to give you a better kind of number. That would be too much liability for the Sam McQuillan book. But yeah, anything plus. It's definitely plus. It's definitely not a minus.
Yeah.
I know everyone in Houston and Dallas hates to hear that, but listen, we're trying, we're doing what we can do.
Listen, that's why they have the sessions, anything can happen.
It is. And like we said, there is some influential money that has moved into that state since last time that this all went down. And so we know the Adelsons are, at least when Sheldon was alive, was not afraid to call someone up and say, hey, I would really like you to do this, and I have the money to either make this happen or not for you in the future and stuff. So we'll see how the Sands Group handles a lot of this other stuff. Of course, we'll monitor. We talk about the growth or lack thereof with ESPN Bet over the course of 2025. Same with Fanatics. What may or may not happen with some of these ancillary things. We talked about Robinhood here on the pod as well. So we have a lot to monitor here over 2025. Some fascinating stuff that'll be happening. And of course, the states that we mentioned here on the pod too. Will they? Won't they? What will happen in the casino side of things? We'll keep you updated all throughout the course of the year over on LegalSportsReport.com. If you haven't done so already, everything we do, absolutely free. So go in, hit that subscribe button. Do appreciate the support here. For Pat, for Sam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.